Hello and welcome. This is just a very quick review of the 2016 Africa Twin with DCT fitted. It was heading over to Wales on what was an 800-mile test, riding alongside two KTM 950s and a Yamaha Tenere 660. Yeah, the idea was just to find out what the bike was like in all conditions really, road, off-road, dirt, everything in between. First and foremost, I think initial impressions were that it is a good off-road bike. It's very agile, it's very slim, feels lower, and it also feels lighter than its weight figures would suggest. It feels a lot less than a 1200 capacity bike, CC bike, and it also doesn't feel any heavier than an 800. So I think they've straddled that divide really well. This being a DCT equipped bike, that was a point of interest. I can't say that I'm overly fussed about the appeal of DCT. It is a very good technical system. The way it works is almost perfect, but I think you either like it or you don't. For me, the absence of finer control that you have at low speed robs the interaction that I like with the bike, and it also lacks some of the control at slow speed that I feel is necessary for what is still a top heavy adventure bike. So yeah, preferably I'd take a manual. But on these kind of trails and in these kind of conditions, the Africa Twin was really good. It was really in its element. It is quite softly sprung as standard. You don't notice it quite so much at first when you first get on it, but as you get comfortable with the bike, you do realise it needs firming up a little bit. Just bobbed along a bit too much and sagged over the bumps. But certainly kept the 950s honest, which is probably the benchmark large capacity adventure bike that it should be compared with. What also impressed was the wading capacities of the bike. They clearly designed this bike to go through water, which it did in this example, and that's almost as high as a headlight, and it went through there no problem. Again, feels really stable, really agile. Traction control is standard. I found the traction control a little bit too sensitive, definitely on the default 3 setting. Even on road, it will just kick in unnecessarily, really, especially with the TKC 80s fitted as they were for this test. So off-road, I think the preference was just to ride with no traction control or no ABS on the rear wheel. Sadly, you can't turn it off on the front wheel, but it's a bike that where less is more really on the Africa Twin. I think the best Africa Twin would be one with no electronic intrusion at all, if that was possible. The frustration with the traction control is that every time you turn off the ignition, it resorts back to default setting, which is a bit of a frustration and sort of is a reminder of the nannying state we've come to accept. But in all conditions, especially now with the rain and on tarmac and compact dirt, the bike was very stable even on the 21-inch front wheel. I found it still very agile. It was still a very good road bike, which I think is always a question when you pitch an off-road centric bike. The bigger front wheel didn't really impede it in the corners on road, and the bike felt very stable. The wind protection and the rain protection was pretty good from the non-adjustable screen. On the motorway, it cruised quite happily at 70-80. It had loads of punch in that mid-range. I think lower down, the engine feels a little bit flat, which I think could benefit from better breathing. Around town, it was great. Fuel economy is not overly impressive, or fuel range, should I say. An 18.6 litre tank means it was the light was coming on at about 140 miles. So I think you could stretch it to an 180 mile, 200 mile range, but not much more than that. At night, the lights were really good, LED lights. It's a sealed unit, so I'm not sure how good that's going to be for long distance travel if you have a breakage. It's not going to be as replaceable as a bulb, but the light stream is really good at night. Really clean, crisp white light. Permanently illuminated indicators as well, which I think you'll either like or you won't. Clock, the dials, the instruments are a little bit clustered. The figures, obviously the speed you can see is quite clear, but the finer details regarding trip and other such things on their fuel gauge is a bit hard to see in daylight particularly. Few changes I'd made immediately are the foot pegs. I think to put such small and dainty foot pegs on an adventure bike is a bit of an omission. And overall, I feel that they've got the bike 9/10 right, and then the final 10th they've sort of just rushed a little bit of the detail in and some of the fit and finish, which I think could be improved. But it clearly had to come in that price at £10,500, and I think having ridden it for these 800 miles, I'll say it is a £10,500 bike for certain, and a very good one at that. And I think the direction it's taken the adventure market in is very good, because it really has no direct rivals at the minute. For me, the Suzuki V-Strom 1000, I'd be giving it the DR treatment, would be the closest rival, or the KTM 1050 if they'd have put the 1190R suspension on it. As it stands, it is a bike on its own, and I wasn't as blown away by the bike as I could have been on the test, but I think that's due to a lot of the hype and hysteria about the bike coming. I mean, no bike could live up to such expectations, and I think to ride one is the main thing. I mean, just get out and ride one, try one, see for yourself, especially the manual DCT conundrum. There is no right or wrong in that debate. It's what you want, it's what you prefer. For me, manual all day long. For others, DCT. But overall, well done Honda, good effort.